Jamshedpur have won the Hero ISL. Hyderabad are the Hero of Indian Super League champions.
Well, he's officiated in over 800 games across the English Football League structures, including some big finals, for example, the Community Shield final between Arsenal and Liverpool, or the League Cup final between Blackburn Rovers and Tottenham Hotspur of 2002. And now he is in India as the Chief Refereeing Officer of the All India Football Federation. So today on the Let's Football Live show, ladies and gentlemen, we have the holy trinity of ex-player and expert Erik Paartalu, expert and commentator John Helm, and of course CRO of the AIFF Trevor Kettle joining us. Please come in, gentlemen, and a very, very good evening to all of you, especially so Trevor Kettle. Trevor, how are you doing today?
Fine, I'm very well, thank you, Suyash. Very well, thank you.
So glad you could join us, Trevor. And what about you, Sir John, Erik? How's it going back there in Mumbai?
Things are great here. We're back in India as well. Incredible India.
Yep, it's been a good week of football for us. It's a lot of talking points, and I had a cracker of a game there on Sunday, so it's been an exciting week.
Yeah, what a game that was, guys. By the way, we'll speak about that game in due course of time. But I want to start the show first, Erik and Sir John, by asking a very, very burning question of Trevor. Trevor, are you ready? This is the most important question of the show.
I'm ready. I'm ready and ready for you.
Okay, so considering that you officiated in one, is the Community Shield an actual trophy?
Well, yes, it is an actual trophy. Yes, but certainly. But if you're implying, is it taken seriously? Well, it's on my major honours list. So yes, most definitely. Very, very
well, that's all that matters. That's all that matters since we have you as the guest on this show, Trevor. So we'll talk about your role as CRO in due course of time as well. But let's start off by just asking you about the variety of experiences you've had throughout your career, over 800 games that you've officiated in, some big finals, like I mentioned. Could you share a couple of interesting anecdotes? So what are your most everlasting memories through the refereeing career you've had so far?
Oh, thank you. Well, there's been so many. I mean, it spans over 24 years, both 5 years as assistant referee. 4 of those years were spent on the Premier League. And then finally 19 years operating as a referee within the English Football League. I think, one of my proudest facts is the fact that I've at one point, I'm only a handful of match officials who have officiated at every Premier League and Football League. Football League round, yeah, precisely, in clubs. So that's certainly one of the facts which I'm very, very proud of. Yeah. In fact, actually, there was only one ground I didn't go to in my active career in the final year, was at Barrow, believe it or not, up in Barrow-in-Furness. I never got there. So that's one. There's been some highlights. There's been some lows as well. There's been some points that people always remind me of. At one point I did have Jose Mourinho sent from the technical area to the stand, along with I think there was Mark Hughes as well, and someone who's familiar in India was a gentleman who gave me a torrent of abuse, was a Mr. Phil Brown. So I'm looking forward to him coming back into India.
Let's get Sir John and Erik back into the frame, and I want to see their reactions as you keep recounting these instances. Trevor, what's the most insane game you've ever officiated in? Where something out of the ordinary or unusual happened?
Oh well, there's been a few. I mean, the thing which always sticks in my mind was my first ever Premier League game, which wasn't insane to people, but it was insane to me. And I can remember being stood at the bottom of the tunnel, ready to go out to officiate Arsenal versus Leicester. And inadvertently, I turned round and I was staring Vieira, Seaman, Henry, Lundberg, all in the face. And I'm thinking, what is Trevor Kettle doing here during this game? So that was quite unique to me. Other games which really stood out was I ran the line in the 2003 fifth round FA Cup between Man United and Arsenal. And that was a really fiery encounter. I mean, I think the first 5 minutes, there were 3 or 4 mass confrontations between the likes of Vieira and Keane, and, I think it was that point where I'm thinking this game is actually not reffable, it's not controllable. Yeah. Because it got to the point where, if the players don't want to be controlled, there's not a lot that referees can do except revert to, the cards. So yeah, that was an insane moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight, Trevor. I want to get Sir John right in over here, because he's someone like you who knows English football through and through, especially the Championship, in which you officiated a lot of games, didn't you? So John, take it away.
By the way, I was just going to say, I saw one of Trevor's most recent matches in England, an FA Cup tie, a place called Guiseley against Cambridge United, and even I was booing him. Everybody else was booing him. Only joking. The craziest situation the craziest situation I've ever seen, Suyash, was actually here in India, where I did a game at Kerala, and it wasn't a Hero Indian Super League game. It was Manipur against Goa in the Santosh Trophy, I think it was, where Manipur scored a goal right at the end through Singh, 89th minute. It was a fantastic goal, Tomba Singh. And they went away and celebrated with their 3 or 4 supporters. And they celebrated so long, the referee said there are none of them coming back. You can kick off. And the gorgeously named Climax Lawrence put the ball in the net at the other end of the field, and it finished 1 apiece with the other side not on the pitch. And they had to come back and replay it after a protest 5 days later and lost 1-0. Long train journey. But I have seen people lose, but not in the Premier League, Suyash, because that's the cream of the crop in the Premier League. So I've never seen anybody lose it there. But where I have seen it happen was in the World Cup final. A big pal of mine, Howard Webb, and Trevor will acknowledge this, I think, in the 2010 World Cup final in South Africa, Holland and Spain. Holland was just so aggressive, and Howard admits to this day he should have sent off Nigel de Jong for a terrible high challenge. And he did really lose it a bit. He had 14 yellow cards and 1 red card, which is not what he wanted, not what anybody wanted. And I suppose every referee's had those sort of days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So about the Championship in particular, Sir John, is there anything that you want to probe Trevor about in terms of just the sheer physicality of that league and how different and difficult it is to officiate in that league?
What I would say is the fitness levels. People don't always appreciate the fitness levels are astonishing. And I've been to the centres where they absolutely work out. And people forget that the referees have to be as fit as the players. They don't just jog up and down. Yeah. And I think that's something that's improved tremendously here this season. The fitness levels, the alertness, the awareness, and the ability to be on the spot. You know, that's a lot goes through a referee's mind. I'm sure Trevor will concur with this during the course of 90 minutes. But the fitness levels now are on a different level to anything they've ever been before.
Yeah, you want to come in there, Trevor, and just your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned about the physicality of the championship. You know, actually even at the Premier League Championship in League One and League Two, we are actually dealing with real athletes. You know, the athleticism of all of these players, right, is tremendous, and fitness levels for referees has actually gone through the roof. And you know, that's the same in England. What I would say, what has really impressed me with the match officials in India is that their fitness levels are above and beyond those in England, right, without a doubt. It was one area where when I was coming to India, I was potentially concerned about, but none the least. These referees and assistants are extremely fit. When we talk about the physicality of the championship in particular, in fact, the championship was much easier to referee than League One, League Two, because it was so much more skillful, and you could anticipate play much easier, and you know, possession of the ball was maintained. Whereas, you know, the lower we went down into Leagues One and Leagues Two, the physicality became a lot more arduous.
Yeah,
and actually, because there's a breakdown in play, you know, the referees need to be just as fit.
Yeah, let me just get Erik's thoughts in over here, Erik, because, you know, like football is evolved, so is refereeing naturally. So just, you know, your views on how that's done, and maybe you'd want to probe Trevor about that particular theme.
Yeah, well, the game's always changing, isn't it? It's getting faster and more complex. I guess my question to Trevor would be, you know, what's been the biggest change for a referee, you know, in terms of when you started until what you see now, even here in India? What's the biggest change that you've seen in the referees from, you know, 20, 30 years ago to now?
I mean, there are a number of aspects there, Erik. I mean, let's just talk about fitness for a start. You know, the fitness levels being demanded upon referees has increased, and even referees in the professional game back in England have dedicated sports scientists and nutritionists. So exactly what professional footballers have, we've got as well, and that is something that, you know, in the future in India, I would like to actually bring into the game. So, you know, fitness levels have improved dramatically, and when I decided to come to India, I clearly had to retire from the English football game, but my fitness levels from 10 years ago have improved significantly even now. So body fat levels were down, you know, my weight was under control. So, you know, there's such a focus, and you just can't even afford to put on 2 or 3 kilograms as a referee, because suddenly the demands of the game suddenly catch you out. I mean, the demand and how things have changed is the profile of refereeing and the scrutiny that referees are under. And, you know, I'm sure we will talk about this later on in the program, but the pressures, the mental pressure that puts upon referees, not only during the game, but also after the game. And it can be for prolonged periods after the game. And I don't think that people really understand the mental pressure which is placed upon match officials these days.
Kevin, do you think that starts right at the bottom as well? I mean, we're discussing physicality. I think in non-league football, say at the national league level, it's even tougher because they're part-time in a certain extent. But they do get a fee. But the pressure's on them when they've may have had a job to do during the day, and then they've got to go and play a match at night, and they might play again 48 hours later. I think that is the toughest environment of all.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, professionalism in India, in England, certainly for referees, has been there since 2001, and I was part of the Premier League when the referees turned professional, and then the assistant referees turned professional. 2015, the Championship referees turned professional. And even now we're giving part-time contracts all the way down into the lower leagues, which allows referees to concentrate on refereeing, do the correct recovery, do the correct training in preparation for games. You know, unfortunately, I wasn't in that position to be able to do that. But so, you know, we have so many referees who go and do a normal day's work, then travel 2 or 3 hours to referee a professional football match. And in my opinion, professional football deserves professional referees.
Well,
Yeah,
Trevor,
sorry to jump in there. So whose obligation is that, Trevor, you think? Because obviously, you know, does that come from all the leagues around the world that they should try and subsidize or find a program or pathway for the refs? Or is it something that the national governing body should do?
Well, I mean, most of the money coming into football, Erik, comes from the commercial partners and the leagues. And you can imagine, you know, the amount of money which is fed into refereeing development from the Premier League. And that'll be no different to the Bundesliga and the Liga. So, but it really all comes down to finance, and can someone actually afford to go professional?
Yeah.
You know, so we do have people in the football league who have decided that actually the money involved they can actually live off, and they might be supported by a partner, for example. You know, other people who are perhaps more mature, such as myself, who held responsible jobs, if we wanted to give up that job just to work to live on the money what football provided, that just wasn't sufficient. You know, and in 2015, the option for me to go full time on the Championship just wasn't an option for me, because, you know, the finances didn't work out. But as we recruit younger referees into the game, and believe it or not, you know, there'll be a debate that should we have ex-players refereeing. In order to reach the very top and gain the experience, you need to start young. Now, if you consider Michael Oliver, who's one of the English referees attending the World Cup this year, he was on the Premier League at the age of 25, and he's gained that experience now. Okay, he's gained that experience. He's now 37, and you know, you just can't buy experience. You know, it is a different profession completely, playing football and refereeing football.
You can't buy experience. That's why we have you here, Trevor. We've spoken enough about the English Football League structures and how it is back in Europe, but let's talk about your role in particular in India now, Trevor. CRO of the All India Football Federation. Could you just take us through in detail and chalk it out about what exactly your role entails, and what is it that you do on a daily basis as the CRO?
Okay, well, at the moment, it's an extremely busy job. Because I'm developing the structure, I'm developing the policies and the processes which will really sort of propel refereeing in India forward. So my role as the CRO really is to manage the whole spectrum of referees across India, from the very top, those who are operating at the FIFA and the ISL level and the I-League level, down to those new recruits. So it is now my responsibility to develop that strategy in order that we can actually develop and improve refereeing in India. Now, you know, the strategy for the IFF is now very ambitious. You know, they're aiming for significant growth of football. But football, you know, if it is going to grow, it's going to need referees. Referees are not going to go away. So, you know, we can't automate the job. So we're going to need to recruit. But what we also want is that there is a clear mission statement that, you know, come the years 2027, we want Indian referees to be operating in Asia at the highest level. And hopefully by 2030, we've got Indian referees operating on the world stage. That's what the ambition is.
Now, Trevor, would another aspect be remuneration? I'm sorry, I hope that's not a hot topic, you know, but I think it's no secret they don't get paid as much here as they do in the English Premier League, for example.
It is, yeah, and clearly one thing which I need to understand is the economics of India, right, which is different to where I've come from. But we have got strategies in place, and I'm sorry I can't allude to what those strategies are at the moment, but we have got a strategy in place where referees operating at the highest level, right, should be in a position which gives them the option to decide that they can take refereeing as a professional career pathway. That's what the ambition is, John.
Yeah. So if you allow me here, Sir John, I'll just jump in and take care of that and speak about Let's Play in particular, which is one of the key themes of this season as well. And I'm sure, Sir John, you've been on the comms and you've noticed how the game's flowing a lot more this time around. So Trevor, could you speak a little bit more about that and what are the key tenets of Let's Play and the real intent behind that?
Absolutely. Well, I did see Trevor's presentation about Let's Play, and obviously the idea is to cut down on unnecessary stoppages, to allow the play to flow. I think the ideal ambition is to get up to 60 minutes of a game where the ball is actually in play, similar to the Bundesliga in Germany. I think also respect, and from what I've seen so far, there has been greater respect between players and officials. Most of the officials have allowed the play to continue. Cramping up does happen, but even if a player's got cramped, they might let play go on if it's not affecting the flow of the game. The use of the advantage rule has been very good so far, and I think Erik will agree with me on this, that almost 90%, shall I say, of the referees have improved this season from what I've seen in past years. So I think there's no question about it that whatever Trevor's done and whatever he's urged them to do has paid off. We've been mightily impressed, and I'm not just saying that, by the standard of the refereeing. They seem to be on the ball. They seem to be making the right decisions most of the time. And I think Trevor would admit that. They are maybe missing a few free kicks, maybe missing the odd yellow card. That's going to happen because of this new initiative, but 100% better than in previous years.
So what are the key themes there, Trevor, and the intent behind Let's Play, as Sir John so beautifully pointed out?
Okay, well, I'll give you a little bit of history, because in May time, I was aware that I was coming to India. So I started doing a little bit of research, looking at some of the previous games available to me, in the Indian Super League. I then came to India in August, and I watched most of the Durham Cup, and there were a couple of themes which really frustrated me, in particular, and one was the number of unnecessary soft free kicks which were being given, and that had a real negative impact upon the players, because they were becoming frustrated that the play was being stopped. It was becoming frustrating for the head coaches, and frustration then leads into dissent. And then when you start getting aggressive behavior and players in the face of referees, then the referees weren't really dealing with that appropriately. So that was what I really wanted to attack when I came to India. In particular, we've had some great success in various aspects in England and in Europe, where there's a focus on allowing normal football contact. We a number of years ago, we got to the point where every time there was an element of physical contact, people were interpreting it as a foul. We moved away from that. But I personally felt that was still pretty prevalent in the Indian game. So when I came, when I was working in an organization, I heard about the amount of time, the effective playing time in Indian football. And I thought, you know what, we're going to do something about this with the initiatives that I've done. So I came up with some key themes, and those key themes were briefed to the head coaches of the Indian Super League, and I can certainly go through some of those with you.
Yeah, Trevor, I'm going to just jump in again with one quick question. It's a plea from me. I think we've said that he's doing great so many ways, but there's one thing that drives me mad, and that is time wasting by goalkeepers. We had one the other night, 10 minutes into the match, and he was time wasting. Can you get a bit stricter on that?
Oh yeah, it's one of the key themes, John. It's one of the key themes. And if I'm not mistaken, I think in one of those games that the goalkeeper was actually cautioned pretty early in the game for time wasting. Yeah, it is difficult for referees. You know.
So John, I also want to get Erik's thoughts in on this, considering he's the next player. Erik, your thoughts on allowing the game to flow and what Trevor calls unnecessary fouls, which on some occasions I do believe that you may have thought of as not unnecessary. So what are your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, we all want the game to flow for sure. And I think Trevor was hinting at, before, what happens if the game is let to be flowing for 2, 3, 4 tackles in a row, particularly if they're heavy tackles. We have seen that happen already this season where a ref's let one go. That's been great. Advantage has been played. The second one's come in, and then maybe the third one's come in with, a bit more force because the referee's not stopped. And the situations I'm talking about. Usually it's a player in the middle of the park, dribbling through, try and tug his jersey and bring him down. If they don't bring him down and they play on, as soon as the ball is put out of play, the referees come back and give the yellow card. Sometimes I can see when it's 2 or 3 or 4 occasions, then there's a possibility of, infuriating the players and, the temperature's rising. But I think in terms of what we've seen from referees so far this year, they've handled that well. And they haven't been afraid of standing there and giving people a yellow card if they're going to come and intimidate the referees. And that's something I spoke to Trevor about a couple of weeks ago when I first played here. The intimidation factor and getting around the ref to try and influence his decision was next level. And now I've seen the referees really grow in stature. So I think that's testament to what Trevor's trying to do.
Yeah, I think to your point there, Erik, is we've still got some way to go regarding the intimidatory behavior. We've made some steps. We haven't gone as far as I want to at the moment, but we've got to. Referees can't be seen to be intimidated, because then people, if they think you're intimidated, they think the next decision, you've been influenced, and there's nothing worse than that. So no, regarding your point on regarding tackles which are perhaps too harsh, one thing that I have gone back and rebriefed all the referees. What we're trying to do is raise the thresholds for those challenges which are normal bodily contact, normal football contact. Okay, now this actually happened back in the football league. We tried to raise the thresholds for normal contact, but then some referees actually raised the threshold for reckless play, yellow cards and red cards, right? And that's not what the intent. And actually in this past couple of weeks, I've gone back out and reiterated that point. A yellow card is fixed. If it's reckless play, it's reckless play. And what I would say also, a foul is a foul, right? We're not trying not to give fouls. What we're trying to eradicate is a couple of things. First of all, we're trying to eradicate when players over exaggerate their fall.
Yep.
So there is in every challenge, there is going to be an element of bodily contact. But prior to me coming to India, referees were then being fooled by the fact that one of the players would fall over, exaggerate his fall, and give a free kick. And we want to eradicate that. If it's just bodily contact coming together, this is a physical, athletic game. We've already spoken about that. And I think it's reasonable and in the spirit of the law of the game for players to try and maintain their feet and not try to buy free kicks, right? Now, what will happen here is you've got to get into the psychology of a referee, right? And the mental state of a referee. So if a referee gives a foul and then suddenly a player rolls over the ground 4 or 5 times and it was a minor foul, but it was a foul, right? I'd like you to put in your mind as a referee, what is now ingrained in your mind. If you're a referee, what's you ingrained? And now there's an element of doubt. So now players run the risk, if they're over exaggerating, they might be actually fouled. Okay, I accept that point. But if you over exaggerate, you might get the foul because it's a foul, But if you put so much doubt in a referee's mind, he might play on. And the key theme that I've put into the referee's minds is that if you are in doubt of something, play on. And and I've got numerous examples from last season and this now where still referees are being fooled, right? And we will be fooled. We will be conned if players want to con us. So that's just the point. The point is that if we've last season we were given an additional 10 free kicks, unnecessary free kicks, that now if we've eradicated those, but we miss a couple, which we will, right? We're still in a far better place. And although statistics are very early days, I mean, we're only 30 odd games into the season. The average number of free kicks from the last 3 seasons was around about 27 per game, and now we're down to around about the 17 or 18 per game.
What's the percentage of getting decisions right now, Trevor, do you reckon? Because we all know the idea would be to get to 100, which we will never do. What figure is that at the moment?
Can I pose a few questions back then? Is that okay? Right.
Well, Sir John, I don't know if the data would have been out on that yet. Am I right, Trevor? I don't think.
Okay, let me just pose a question back to you guys. If you were refereeing a game, and let's just break every game into there's 90 minutes. So every minute, on average, how many decisions do you think a referee's got to make? They're not all major decisions, but how many decisions do you think a referee makes every minute? I'll open it to the floor.
Every minute, do you say?
Every minute.
Or 30.
Or every
34.
second, perhaps, because, yeah.
Okay, but there, I would say, in every minute, there's at least 4 or 5 decisions you've got to make. There's physical contact. Whose throw-in was it? Was it a goal kick? Okay. So these are all simple decisions to be made, right? And then thrown in there in the 90 minutes, you're going to have some major big decisions, right? But if we said there was about 4 decisions to be made every minute, that's almost somewhere between 300 and 400 decisions in a game, right? So when I listen to a commentator like yourself, John or Erik, right, and maybe you turn around and say that the referee's made 2 or 3 of those decisions wrong, right? You're talking 3 or 4 decisions out of a potential 300 or 400. So
very acceptable.
So yeah, so there is analysis. There is analysis in the in other leagues where the accuracy of referees' decision making is somewhere around about 97 to 98%, right? Which is exceptional, right? But that includes all of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we start looking at the major decisions, right? And we are analysing all the major decisions. We're talking about penalties awarded, not awarded, goals allowed, goals disallowed, okay? Serious foul play, violent conduct, right? So all of those are then categorised separately. And at present, last year, we were looking at an accuracy of around about 72%. This year, right, with independent analysis, right, we are around about 86%.
That's what I wanted to hear. That
is heartening. That is heartening. And just since you mentioned evaluation and analysis, Trevor, I want to throw it to Erik on say exploring the things of what happens after the game's done. Once the referees do return back to the dressing rooms, do you want to take that forward with Trevor, Erik?
Yeah, you've asked it, Suyash. Exactly what I was going to ask. In terms of evaluating the performance after the games, I mean, do you sit down with the referees? Do you go through it with them in real time? Do you watch it on a laptop and go through every decision, or is it, what's the process like after the game?
Oh, I mean, I don't think people really appreciate how in depth the analysis is. So at every single game, Erik, there is an independent referee assessor stands in the stand, watching the game, getting a perception of what's happening, and he's recording everything of this, and he's in contact with an analyst, and he is asking him if on particular incidents can he clip that ready for the debrief after the game.
Wow.
Okay?
That's quick.
And in addition, right, there's either myself or a referees coach who is watching that live on TV, right, or I'm in the ground, right. So then there's a debrief after the game, and clearly there are some decisions which, at full speed, Eric, you know, you've had to use it, John's had to use it. You've got to have numerous replays, and you've got to freeze frame it. You've got to put it into slow motion to determine the accuracy of a decision. So, and we do exactly the same. So after the game, the referee's debriefed, and then the referee assessor will put in his report, okay, submit his report, which comes on a centralized system. And then after every match day, myself and the two coaches will examine all of the key match incidents and actually determine the accuracy of those.
Yeah.
So, but clearly people think that, you know, when I mentioned 86%, people think they don't believe that. And the reason why they don't believe that is because the decisions that we do get wrong, and we have got wrong, actually are the become high profile.
Yeah.
You know, very rarely do the key match incidents we get right reach high profile. It's the wrong ones we get which reach the profile.
Yeah. I just wanted to jump in there and say just about the feedback from my point of view as an ex-player. I really enjoyed getting that feedback directly so I could process it and move on straight away. And some clubs, you know, when they come into the football environment, if they're playing an away game, they may not get the video session or the feedback for 2 or 3 days. So do you think that's good for the referees? Are the referees quite positive after the game, regardless after that feedback?
Eric, the whole body of referees, and it's not just Indian referees, it's referees worldwide. You know, we want to learn and grow. There is nothing worse for a referee when he's known he's made a wrong decision. And you know, when I was in that situation, you know, I wanted to get back out onto the field to play and put that to bed and go out and prove myself again. Okay, that's what we want to do. So, you know, if people's opinions are that referees don't scrutinize their performances, and in particular, you know, it crucifies referees mentally when a decision is proven wrong, right? Because no referee goes out there to make a wrong decision, right? Not deliberately, right? No. Right? Just like players, you know, a player doesn't deliberately go to miss a penalty. A goalkeeper doesn't deliberately drop the ball through his legs and allow a goal to be scored. You know, no one does that.
No, Trevor, I know, and we're not talking about specific instances, but I know a referee was devastated, you know, this season just by one decision sort of thing. And that happens because, contrary to what some people might think, you are all human. And I've always thought you must have the skin of a rhinoceros, because you know that 50% of the crowd are going to hate every decision that you make. The other 50% agree with it. Have you got the skin of a rhinoceros?
Oh, yeah, it's thicker, John. Right? You know, we referees are unique individuals. Okay, we thrive on the atmosphere. We thrive on the challenge of refereeing a football match with 22 men. You know, potentially in front of, you know, 10, 15, 50,000. You know, at Calcutta the other day there was 62,000. You know, that gives you an adrenaline rush. It gives you an adrenaline rush. So look, we are a unique brand, right? And we've got a good sense of humour, believe me.
Oh, that one I'm not sure about that.
What do you think, Trevor? Just going back to, you know, the referee talk of what makes them human. What's a defining trait for a referee? What do you look for when possibly you go and scout for a referee? What's the things you look for?
I mean, the first thing I would say, Eric, with any referee is that you need courage. Okay, you know, the first time you pick a whistle up and walk out onto a football pitch, right? Not at professional level, at grassroots level, it is terrifying. Yeah, and somebody who's made that step, right, should be praised, because, you know, I speak to so many managers and ex-players, and I say, come on, give it a go. And the first thing they say is no thanks. So it is about courage, and actually it's then utilizing that courage to go out there and try and deliver a fair game in the spirit of the game and the laws of the game. Now, there are many players who won't allow that. So therefore, you've got to have the courage to deal with it. So first of all, it is one, you've got to have the courage. You do need the physical and mental stamina, right, to be able to referee, especially at elite level. Okay, you've got to be able to have that mental strength and the physical strength. And and what I would say is that all of these current breed, they do have the mental strength. Okay, what I want them to do now is develop their desire not to be intimidated, to walk off that field thinking, actually, I've done my best. So so it's going to take a bit. There are numerous characteristics which are required.
Okay.
Do you ever go into a game, dare I say, preconceived? Because you read the papers like anybody else, and we all know there are certain players who have reputations for being divers. Do you consider that before a game?
The answer is yes, John. And you know what? I hear players and managers saying, "Oh, well, you should enter a game, without any ideas." Teams go and send scouts to look at other teams before they play. All right. Okay. Referees of referee teams and know what issues, create us problems. And we are a team. We're not individuals. Right. We will work on understanding what team tactics, what team individuals are going to cause us a problem. Now, we have to enter every game with a clear mind. Okay, but we need to be prepared. There are certain players, when I was refereeing, I knew I had to go in with a different management style with those individuals to get them to work with me. Okay, because if I didn't go in with a certain management style, as what happened in previous games, I might end up sending them off. So therefore, if I can change my management style to work with players and we end up with 11 versus 11, then that is a good management.
I see Erik with a wry smile over there, Erik. We just want to wrap up the show, but your final thoughts on what Trevor's just said over there.
Yeah, it's great. I'd love to speak to him a lot more. I think we all would love to hear his ideas, especially how the evolution of refereeing, is coming about here in India. There's so many, different ways to look at it, particularly as an ex-player now, a commentator. You have to tip your hat off to the referees, and we do, from time to time give them a hard time, but it's only because their position is so vital, so critical, but we forget that it's such a difficult job. And it's great to have someone like Trevor coming here to actually try and boost that and grow the game here in India. I think that the more people that can do that, the better. So it's nice to hear from him.
Well, no, absolutely.
And what I would say, Erik and John, I've got no problem. Okay, as we said, there will be decisions which referees get wrong, and commentators need to. You guys got a job, and you've got to give an opinion, okay, of what was right and wrong, which is absolutely fine. I think all I ask of the commentators is just think of the sort of the tone and the phrases that you use, because these are guys making honest decisions on the day under mental pressure, right? These guys, that the decisions they make are honest. So we just got to be mindful that sometimes we use phrases and tones which can be quite inflammatory towards referees, and that sort of that can create actually some mental stress on referees, because every single game they will leave that when they reach home, maybe a day, maybe 2 days later after a game, and that's how long it is. Some of these guys are away from their family for 4 to 5 days to go and referee a football match in the ISL and I-League. What they'll do is that they will go back and they will watch that football match. And, a lot of the comments and the words being used, right, can have some really detrimental effects. We and I in particular are not looking to hide behind clear and obvious errors. And we're not looking to do that. In fact, what we're looking to do, and there has been some clear and obvious errors occur this year, we're looking to analyze why those errors have been made, right? create training packages and feed that back to the whole group. And that's what we're doing now, and that's what we'll continue to do. But, you know, we will see the decision-making accuracy increase. We won't eradicate it to the point where it's 100%, because, you know, you two gentlemen who are commentators, even you two will disagree on certain scenarios, you know, so we won't get a consensus on everything.
I accept that, Trevor. All I would say in response is that just like a referee who has 1 second in which to make a decision, we have 1 second in to decide what we're going to say.
No.
But we do try. I think we do try to support referees overall. I always certainly have done. I think the ambition might be to get an Indian World Cup referee, don't you?
Oh, well, we've set out a mission statement now for referees in India. And as I said, you know, the mission is that if we can get some high profile games in Asia by 2027 and on the world stage by 2030, right, that will be a very proud moment. Be a proud moment for me, be a proud moment for AIFF and Indian referees.
Well, then slow and steady, I guess, is the key takeaway from that, gentlemen. I love how we're all meeting each other halfway on this live program, and Trevor's had his bit to say. So John and Erik. So I'll just wrap this up. I know we can go on and on, maybe chat offline later too as well, to delve into refereeing a lot more. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. It's been a very fascinating episode of the Let's Football Live show, because generally, Trevor, we get ex-players and we get current players and managers, but never a referee in this capacity before. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views. And here's hoping that everything that you wish to achieve with regards to the standard of refereeing in India and in general the refereeing in the ISL does come to fruition at one point of time. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much.
Suyash.
And what we really want to do is that, you know, we want to increase the communication between all stakeholders. And what I would like to happen in the future is when we get to certain scenarios in games, right, when emotions have died down and we can all analyze it sensibly, is that we would go through that analysis and we will identify when referees have got it right, which might be different to your opinion, but we'll also identify when referees have got it wrong. Right. So we're trying to personalize referees and make sure that everyone understands that, you know, in the majority, these guys have got wives, they've got children at home. They dedicate a lot of time to training. They dedicate a lot of time to football. Okay. And they come out to do an honest job.
Well, need I say more? You've heard it from Trevor Kettle. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will wrap this show of the Let's Football Live show. We do this every Tuesday at 7 p.m. and rest assured next week, we'll have an equally insightful and fascinating show for you. Until then, from Trevor Kettle, myself, John Helm, and Erik Paartalu, it's bye-bye. Take care.
And Jamshedpur have won the Hero ISL. Hyderabad are the hero of Indian Super League champions.